Welcome back into the Nerd Herd edition of Talking Dynasty. Today, we're more just going to be forward thinking more than thinking about theory in this episode because we're going to be
strategy.
Looking at strategy. Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. We're going to be looking at the 2024 NFL draft class, and we're going to do a mock draft of 2 rounds of the 2024 draft. So Superflex. We didn't even establish this is tight end premium, right?
Yeah. That's what I was assuming.
I mean, it doesn't. There's only gonna be one tight end in it anyway, so it's not really gonna matter. But tight end premium, Superflex mock draft for 2024. Jared, before we get into the actual players, I think the first few guys are not going to be a big surprise. They're names that you don't even have to be into Devy. You don't even have to be into college football to know these first few names. But we were talking even beforehand. The purpose of this is not so much to give you specific players and our evaluations on them, more so to just give you a general thoughts on the 24 class.
Correct. It's Garrett and I, we spend a lot of time breaking down film, a lot of freaking time, man. We take it serious, and we do the nerd score for the Nerd Herd every year. And we have not dug into the tape on these players yet. So the surface level player analysis that we're going to get into tonight is just to give you guys an idea of who these players are, general thoughts on them, how the community as a whole, which is the market of Dynasty Fantasy Football, is viewing this class, and how you should prepare yourself or position yourself within your league with these picks coming up for next year, because it's never too early to be ahead on the next rookie draft classes. You know, that's strategy in itself, and that's why we started the show is, Dynasty Fantasy Football strategy. Get ahead of your league mates on the upcoming rookie classes by listening to the show.
Yeah, and something I want to talk about just with picks in general. Picks are the currency of your league. The nice part about picks, and this goes kind of into Devy versus Dynasty and some of that too. The beauty of knowing that you're going to have a top pick in the following year. Maybe you don't know for sure if it's going to be the 101, but knowing that you're going to have a top pick. The value of that pick, almost 100% of the time, there are a few like weird instances that happen, but that pick is only going to appreciate in value. It's not going to depreciate because draft picks don't get hurt. Draft picks don't get suspended. Draft picks don't have bad years. So even if we know that Caleb Williams is one of the best quarterbacks that we've ever talked about. To me, in my opinion, the 101 in 2024 is more valuable than Caleb Williams, because could that be Caleb Williams if he does everything that we expect him to do? Yes, it probably will be, because he looks like a freaking stud that can run the ball, throw the ball, like he's got all of it. But if something weird happens where he pulls an Andrew Luck and decides to go back to school for another year, or heaven forbid he has a devastating injury that causes him to miss some time moving forward, or it limits his mobility, or if there's a heaven forbid a terrible court case that he ends up having to be involved in, I don't have to take Caleb Williams with the 101. So I'm still getting an elite asset in a Drake May, a Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm still getting an elite guy because I'm not locked into Caleb Williams. I'm locked into the 101. So these picks, when you're thinking about trading for assets, trading for future picks, while you need to evaluate, what the value of those pieces are, it's never a terrible idea to do, because they almost always tend to appreciate in value as the years move forward.
Does that make sense? Said. Yeah, right. Perfectly said.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit our general thoughts before we get into our picks, like how we're feeling about this class. I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as like blue chip Bijan Robinsons or Trevor Lawrences go, like this class has 3 or 4 of them or maybe 3, at their respective positions. You got Caleb Williams from USC, from Oklahoma to USC. And then you got Marvin Harrison Jr., Go Bucks, one of the best receiver prospects we've seen. I don't know.
Since
think
Megatron?
since I've been doing Dynasty and Nerd Scores, like, this is it. This is the guy. And then there's Brock Bowers at tight end, who some people are a little different on, but I mean, personally, I think he's a freak. Top 10 pick, probably.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, his only sort of like yellowish flag is he's not quite your prototype size of like a 6'5", 235 type guy. Like, he's a little on the shorter side, 6'3", but man, can he move and make plays and go get the football.
yeah. But I mean, what you want to get from these drafts are like blue chip guys that can make differences on your rosters. I mean, these are top 2-round startup picks coming in, as far as Marvin Harrison and Caleb Williams go.
No.
Now, there's obviously the most important season hasn't happened yet for these guys. The college football season has not happened for this draft class yet, so there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be guys that emerge that we've never heard of. There's going to be guys that we have been waiting to see more of, flame out a little bit or, lose draft stock. And then there's going to be guys that proved what we thought, like Drake May, quarterback from North Carolina, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. Like, last year looked really good. We need to see a little bit more still.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson from Ohio State, maybe the RB1 in this class, personally mine right now. Broke his foot going into last year. You could tell last year he wasn't himself compared to his freshman season. So how does he bounce back this year? Storylines like that, I guess for me, an overall feel for this class right now is like I'm not super high on it, but there's definitely the studs that you want, the top 4 picks. Garrett, what do you think so far about this class? Like, what are your overall thoughts before we get into the picks?
I think I'm a tad higher than you because I am really excited about this class. I do think that like you mentioned, there are some of those elite players that you want to have in every class. If you have a bad season, you want to have that player that you're like, oh, here comes this guy to save the day. Like, whew, I'm glad I'm getting him next year. So you have that. You have at the wide receiver position, it's interesting because it's kind of Marvin Harrison Jr. and then everybody else, but that everybody else is looking really solid. They're not even close to the same tier as Marvin Harrison Jr., but
no one is.
No one is. No one has been for,
he would have been the first receiver last year.
Yes.
And
Justin Jefferson looked fantastic when he came out. Marvin Harrison Jr. will absolutely have a higher nerd score than Jamar Chase had. Like, I already did a preliminary one. I already did a preliminary one, and he beat him by like several points. So, actually, and CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Smith were in a similar range. All 3 of those guys were close.
Would you finish at on Harrison Jr. preliminary score? Just curious.
I want to say he finished with like an 83, and those guys were at like 80, 81.
80. Yeah.
So yeah, he's like well ahead of the best prospects that I've. Now, it's a year early, we'll factor in this year's tape, but yeah. But the rest of the class, the thing that we didn't have before that we do have with this class, there's some ridiculous size in this class.
Yeah.
Like,
compared to last year.
Every prospect for the most part. Now,
this year.
It's at least what they're listed at, but like everybody we talk about over 6 foot. All of them. Whereas
Pretty
last
much.
year it was like we had a guy or 2 that were over 6 foot, and then everybody else is like, well, he's 5'10", so there's enough there. And
especially the receivers, it's like a opposite. It's night and day compared to.
Absolutely, we got a guy. I don't even know if he ended up getting drafted. We have a dude that's one of the top prospects. That's 6'7" at wide receiver.
Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, it's hilarious how big some of these guys are compared to other classes. But you also have that at running back. We have a lot of like good sized players as well at the running back position. So I think that there's a lot of upside after Caleb and Drake. There's a lot of other quarterbacks that could enter, not their tier, but could enter first round conversation as well. So I like this class quite a bit. And for as hyped, and look, I was part of that hype, so don't get me wrong. As hyped as 23 was, right now today, 24 is looking just as good. I truly think, and maybe a hair better.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's like the nature of this episode. It's like, you don't know. We don't know. We're getting a feel for it, though. I mean, It's important to at least understand where the class stands currently.
All right, Jared, kick us off with the first pick.
All right. Enough chit-chat, pre-draft talk. I mean, 101, it's a given. Superflex leagues, Caleb Williams, hands down. I think he's the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. I think he's a better, in terms of fantasy football. I mean, he offers what you want on the ground. He's extremely good at improvising, making the rushers miss. Under pressure, he stands in there and delivers. Dude, I saw him do this 360 jump in the air, jump pass on the money, down the field, Heisman winner. So he started at Oklahoma, one of the top quarterback prospects coming out in his class. Lincoln Riley got the job at USC. He transferred with his head coach, moved over there, won the Heisman last year. Everyone knows about Caleb Williams. I can't wait to watch him this year. He's extremely talented as far as throwing the ball. He can do it off platform. He can throw it down the field with velocity, with zip, on the money. He's good at tight window throws. I think he plays a little too much hero ball. Probably takes too many sacks or doesn't throw the ball away enough. But that's pretty common with these guys. From my, since really breaking down these guys and scouting them over the past 4 or 5 years, it's like these top guys try to do too much and win the game in college, but it ends up working for him. There's so many comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, and
there is.
It sounds stupid, right? But dude, when you watch him, you're like, dude, he plays exactly like Pat Mahomes. He does some funny things. Like Pat Mahomes, escapes pressure and throws underhand or no look passes. He just does stuff that you can't teach.
No, you said that, and it should be no, you're not allowed to compare. Kind of like forever, people want to keep comparing to Tyreek Hill or the next Travis Kelce or different players that are do something elite. You always want to compare guys to him, but dude, the Caleb Williams to Mahomes comp makes a lot of sense. It does. They're both really good athletes, but they're winning first by throwing the football. Mm-hmm. And so while they have that rushing upside, they're going to win with their arm more so than anything else, but they escape a lot. And it's uncanny.
He's going to give you the rushing floor that you want. He's not Anthony Richardson athlete, but he'll be able to score for you on the ground. So I think he's locked and loaded as the first overall pick for next year. I don't see that changing unless there's some off the field things that happen or his draft stock changes for some reason. I think he's the 101 in the NFL draft next year. So let's go, Garrett. Let's take who we know. Everybody knows you're going to take here at 102.
Dude, this was really hard. Actually,
really?
I had a hard time with this pick because I went with Marvin Harrison Jr. We talked about him before we even started talking about the picks. I think dude is a freak of nature. I legitimately, when I was watching his tape, this is the only one that I have any real tape watching on so far. When I was watching his tape, I was like, I can't find the weakness. I can't find the area I'm concerned about. Speed, check. Size, check. Athletic ability, check. Body control, check. Route running, check. He checks every box. That shouldn't exist, but it does in Marvin Harrison Jr. But the reason it was difficult is because a lot of the scouts, and from what I've seen, it makes a lot of sense, talked about how in this year's class, the top 2 quarterbacks are still in college. And the other one they were referring to was Drake May.
You're talking about the 2023 draft class?
Yeah, ahead of Richardson and Young and Stroud and all those guys. most scouts were saying they would rather have both Caleb Williams and Drake May to all of those guys. And so that's what makes it difficult is Drake May is a good athlete in his own right. He can run in his own right. Like he's got, I mean, even more prototypical size than Caleb Williams has.
6'5", yeah, 220.
I mean, he checks a lot of boxes as well. He was a highly recruited player out of and went to North Carolina, and like he's a tempting prospect. And in a super flex league, I don't care how good the receiver is. If that quarterback enters that top tier, you're always going to prefer the quarterback. So that's what made it tough. But Marvin Harrison Jr. feels as can't missy as Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and we're doing this draft at this point, at this junction of where we are at in the process. So yeah, I think that's the right pick. I wouldn't have hesitated taking Marvin Harrison here.
I was going to ask you if you would have thought about May or no.
No, May still, I mean, let's go. 103. I'm on the clock. I'm taking Drake May. So he's the next pick. I think at this point, we need to see another year of production from him. He had a great season last year at North Carolina. Like Garrett said, he's able to do it on the ground. Fantastic athlete. His brother played basketball, Luke May, from North Carolina. I'm sure people probably remember their March Madness run when he was there. Anyway, he reads the defense. He's able to make the right decisions, throw tight window passes. He needs to clean up a little bit of his footwork. Accuracy can sometimes be an issue. It'll be interesting to see how the offense coordinator change, how he's able to deal with that, losing Josh Downs. How is he able to adapt to those changes? Can he be the guy to still take them to where they want to go? So, love Drake May. I think he's a better prospect than a few of the guys, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson as well. He just pops when you watch them. You're like, oh, this guy's a dude. This guy's a dude.
I think the only concern for Drake May, and you kind of alluded to it, is are we going to see a Will Levis type of drop off? Where his junior campaign or his second to last season was awesome, but then his last year he lost a couple assets and he didn't quite perform as well as you wanted him to. Like that could happen. I don't think it will. I think he's that guy. I think we've also seen North Carolina really emerge as a producer of football talent, whereas it was looked at as a basketball school for such a long time. But Mac Brown's done a great job of really turning that program around and making that a football school as well. We've seen a lot of players in recent years come out of there really, really successfully. So I think that's a great pick. That puts me up at 104. I ended up going with Brock Bowers here. He's kind of in like this own little tier of his own, in my opinion. Like you have those top three guys where, especially because Drake May is a quarterback, I think it's the first three picks are pretty chalk, pretty obvious.
Yep.
And then Brock Bowers always kind of seems to be the fourth one. I think it's just because partly because he's a tight end, and as good as he looks, he doesn't have the elite size, whereas like all of the other guys kind of check all of the boxes for the most part. That's the one box that he doesn't check. But man, does he look freaking good. Like his ability with run after the catch is fantastic for a tight end. Like you don't see that very often.
Super fast, chiseled, dude. I mean, this guy is jacked and
produced as a true freshman.
Yeah, I remember there were talks about how this guy is ready to go to the NFL as a true freshman or straight out of high school, I mean. And he came on the scene and proved it. I think he's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I think this is the right play here. Garrett taking him at 104 for what we know now.
Right.
So we know that there's one of those elite tight ends coming up in this draft class. And I was watching a video. I think it was, I don't know if it was on TikTok or YouTube Reels or something. It was like a interview with some of the Georgia players, and just the way they talk about Brock Bowers, like how different that dude is. Like there's something there. Like he's a dude. I really don't have too many hesitations about him being a good NFL player. So if you're in tight end premium leagues, or I mean, just in general, taking a shot on a guy like that can give you such an advantage. If he ends up being what we think.
Yeah. So I think we've been pretty chalk
Yeah.
so far with the first four. I think it's pretty obvious. I would be very surprised at this point in the process. Obviously, once the season starts, these things can move around a little bit, but I don't think you're going to see a different top four until the season starts. Five's where it gets interesting. So, Jared, you're up at pick 5. Where'd you go?
I'm going with my wide receiver 2 right now in this class. It's from the same team as the wide receiver 1, another Ohio State Buckeye, Emeka Egbuka. Coming into college, he was the number 1 rated wide receiver in his class, and he's really come into his own. Last year, he passed over 1,000 yards. He's playing for one of the best wide receiver coaches for putting guys in the league, Brian Hartline, who's now their offensive coordinator. So I love that, because they're getting coached up, right? They're getting coached up by someone that's proven they can put guys in the league that produce. I think he is really good at finding the soft spots in the zone. I think he has a really good feel for the game. He's fast, catches the ball away from his body. He's got good size too.
I'll say he's thick. He's thicker than you would think of a lot of these receivers. He's a guy like that has more of he's not as big as this guy, but more of that AJ Brown type build, more so than just skinny, lanky slot guys. Like, no, he's got the frame to be an NFL player.
Yeah, 6'1", 205. It's not little. I mean, it's for a wide receiver, that's good. So I like Emeka Egbuka. I think if he produces another good season this year, that's going to be I think he's going to be a solid NFL wide receiver, just based on what I've seen surface level so far.
Yeah.
What do you think?
All right. I love that. No, I'm with you. I was torn between him and the guy that I ended up taking at pick 6, so I think you could go either way.
Oh, what do you know?
Both good options, but another Ohio State Buckeye at pick 6 here. TreVeyon Henderson. We talked about this running back class. The top spot is very much open. Like, it's wide open right now. There's probably 4 or 5 different guys realistically that could take it, and who knows who will emerge out of nowhere as well. So it's very wide open, but TreVeyon Henderson was the number 1 running back in his class. So we went from the number 1 wide receiver in his class to the number 1 running back in his class, and he was a top 15 overall recruit as well. TreVeyon Henderson was, and we saw some incredible things from him as a true freshman. I mean, just absolutely dominating teams as a true freshman. And there was the conversation, and I don't think anybody ever actually did it, but there was a conversation of, is he in a similar tier to Bijan Robinson while he was in his freshman campaign? That was a topic of conversation, is, are they in a similar tier for their respective classes? And everybody still had Bijan ahead for the most part, but he was there. Then this past year, the foot injury, he just never quite recovered. Didn't look like himself. Missed some time. Missed some games. He didn't have that explosive element that he seemed to have.
Tripped up by the turf so many times watching the games. Like, get him out, man.
It was bad. It was bad. So, but I wonder if we're going to see a very similar trend to what we saw with another Ohio State running back, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, awesome freshman campaign, was banged up in his sophomore year. His stock fell because of it. And then he had a great junior year, and people once again were on board. The difference between these two guys, though, is TreVeyon Henderson has the elite pedigree of being the top guy, and TreVeyon Henderson has more of that traditional build than J.K. Dobbins had.
Yeah.
So, with all of these things together, if TreVeyon Henderson looks like a similar player to what he was as a freshman, we're talking probably end or beginning of the second round type of running back, like in the range of where Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift were being taken, Javonte Williams.
I could see that.
Probably that type of range if he plays up to the potential that we think he could have.
Yeah, if he has another year like last year, then he's probably not the RB1, depending on what happens.
There's several other guys that could jump him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And 107, I'm on the clock. I'm taking one of those guys. It's Raheem Rocket Sanders, running back from Arkansas. I mean, this dude is a freight train. He's 6'2", 227. He actually played like some receiver in high school, and they were recruiting him to possibly play linebacker in college. So extremely versatile player. Can catch the ball, can run you over, can make you miss. This guy's super fun to watch. I don't know if you've really been able to dig in much. Well, we both haven't dug in by our standards, but
Right.
if you've caught a few games, then I suggest you put the tape on. 'Cause he's super fun to watch. He had over 1,400 yards in the SEC, and he could emerge as the RB1. Honestly, he's got that size that I love to see, ability to catch the ball. So we'll see what happens at Arkansas this year, but I believe he'll be a first-round rookie pick next year.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much so in the realm of possibility. He could easily, and I've seen on the Twitter streets, I've seen 4, 5, maybe even 6 different people talked about as the RB1 in the class.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it's either Henderson or Sanders. Like almost all the time, it's one of those two players.
Nick Whalen, my man. Trey Benson, who we'll get into.
Somebody
later.
might be taking him in a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Somebody
might. But not with this pick, because this pick, I went back to the quarterback well, and I took Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback. He flashed last year.
This is the guy that could have the biggest change after this season in like where he's taken.
We're talking I believe it was the highest score ever given to a prospect by 24/7 Sports. Is that correct? I'll double check that.
He was a perfect 1.0. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the guy. But what made his career a little funky is he came out a year early. And
came out of high school a year early so he could cash in on the NIL.
Which he says that's not why he did it, but we
Bullshit.
all know. That's 100% why he did it.
Yeah.
And what did he have to gain at that point? Like, he was the guy.
Smart move, bro. That's what I say.
Smart move.
Yeah. Get them.
So went to Ohio State for a year, sat as a Buckeye, then transferred to Texas. And, there was a good quarterback recently that sat at Ohio State for a while and then transferred to another school down south and ended up being the number 1 overall pick. His name's Joe Burrow. So who knows? Same type of path could be in the works for Quinn Ewers. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But all the tools are there.
Yeah.
It's can he put it together consistently is really the question. And so I'm taking this pick more on the projection of who he could be, more so than on what he did specifically last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it's Quinn Ewers could end up being 103, like he could, or 102, man, depending on what he does this year. I mean, if he really puts it together and plays to his true potential, his arm talent is off the chain. He just needs to clean up under pressure throws. Like when I watch him, he's a little frantically when guys are in his face, and that ain't changing, dude. So he's got all the talent around him down there in Texas, and he's got a great coach to learn from, Steve Sarkisian. He's put a lot of guys, top quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's coached them up. So he's got everything around him to succeed. So we'll see. I mean, sky's the limit for Quinn Ewers. So one of those guys that's either going to drop a lot or fall. I mean, or rise a lot.
Yep. Boom bust pick here.
Yep. And I'm taking at 109 one of his receivers.
Hey,
Xavier Worthy, 6'1", twig, 163 pounds.
Devontae Smith body type.
Yeah, and it doesn't really bother me, man. Like, it's not a negative for me, depending on how you play. So I need to dig into his film. Devontae Smith, like, coming out, played physical, given his size. Like, I wasn't worried about him. So extremely fast, extremely twitchy, fluid athlete. Probably one of the best athletes in college football right now. He's said to have some hands issues, but I think those were more like concentration jobs. I think he had like, I don't have the number in front of me, but one of the higher drop rates last year in the NFL, but I mean in the college football, but you can put him anywhere. You can put him in the slot. You can put him outside. Extremely high potential. Could end up being wide receiver too over Igbuka, depending on how him and Ewers connect this year.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that I've actually had on some of my C2Cs and Devy leagues. Produce as a true freshman. I always like seeing guys that can come out right away and make a difference, because it's tough to do the jump from playing high school football to playing with grown men that are about to go into the league, especially if you're in a Power 5 conference. And, it's tough to do for these guys. So to see him be able to produce that early was definitely something that I was excited to see. So I'm curious how it plays out, because he was another one where freshman year, the hype was really high. And then last year was just okay. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as great as we originally thought. So he needs to have a strong junior campaign to help solidify himself as a round one type of wide receiver at the NFL level.
I agree.
All right. That puts me back on the clock. And the aforementioned Trey Benson from running back from Florida State. And once again, we're getting some real prototypical NFL-sized running backs in this class. 6'1", 221 pounds. Now, his numbers last year weren't eye-popping. 990 yards for 9 touchdowns. So it wasn't like ridiculous amount of yards, but he didn't get the amount of work that you would have wanted early in the season. It was really the second half of the year where he started really going nuts and just put up, four out of 5 games in his last 6 were over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns in a lot of those games. So we're talking about somebody that really showed a lot, really earned that job. It wasn't something that was just given to him and handed to him. He went from a guy that was getting 6 and 7 carries in games to a guy that was getting 18 and 20 carries in games. And so you really like to see that. A guy that seems like he can do it in the receiving game as well. So despite being a bigger back, has decent hands, good enough hands to be able to contribute there at the next level too. So he's a guy that I'm excited about. I haven't dug in a ton to his tape, but I'm really excited from all of the things that I've heard and the little clips that I've watched. I like Trey Benson.
Yeah, the clips are nice. He looks good. He's explosive and he's big. They make people miss.
I saw you put him down on our list a little bit. You were trying to hide him from me, weren't you? You were trying to hide him and sneak him later.
No, I wasn't being that. I was just throwing guys on a list so we could do this draft. But he started off at Oregon, and he had a severe knee injury where they thought it might be career-ending. So he transferred to Florida State, and like Garrett said, he earned his way onto the field, and it's cool to see how hard he must have worked to come back from that and produce the way that he has, and to be mentioned amongst the top backs in this upcoming class. So definitely pay attention to Florida State. They got a lot of they got a good quarterback. Got a really 6'7" receiver Garrett mentioned earlier, Johnny Wilson. They got a transfer from Michigan State, Keon Coleman, who we might mention later.
Might not.
They got some nice players over there. So Jaheim Bell, tight end from South Carolina, that transferred in. They got a lot of guys that might get drafted, or you might want to select in your upcoming rookie draft. So watch Florida State if you can this year. I am on the clock at 111, and I am selecting a Big Ten big running back, 6'1", 240, Braylon Allen. Freak of nature.
He's so young, too.
Yeah, coming into college, he was, I think, the youngest player in college football, and he tore it up. He didn't look like a high school player. He came in, was breaking tackles. He's 6'1", 240. So the things that I've read on this guy in the weight room is like every bit of that weight is strength. So he's a bruiser. Maybe he's a Brandon Jacobs type of guy. I think he needs to work on his ability to make guys miss, but that's not going to be his game. There's just not much lateral agility to him. But
As long as he can get that one cut. As long as he can get that one cut, we're good.
Dude, I think he's a pretty safe pick. Like, he's going to get drafted, man. Like, he's going to get drafted probably day 2, if I were to guess. And
because his straight line speed is solid.
It is.
Like, it's a little bit more build up, but his straight line speed is solid.
Yep. So Wisconsin, another running back. That's all they do is produce running backs, dude. Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon, James White, Monty Ball. Who else?
You mentioned Brandon Jacobs.
Did he go to Wisconsin?
I thought so, but now I'm questioning it. No,
I don't think so.
Ron Dane. It was Ron Dane that went there. I was like, I know it was a really big physical guy. It was Ron Dane.
I feel like I'm forgetting some.
Either way, they produce offensive linemen and running backs.
I know, but I'm just like on it now. I'm like, I want to know other Wisconsin running backs. But
all right,
you go.
Well, while you're looking up the other Wisconsin backs that have come out, I'm going to take the last pick of the first round, and I'm going to go with Rome, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly. Odunes? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Odunze.
All right. Once again, I talked about the size in this class. 6'3", 211 pounds. So another like physical specimen type of player, a guy that like you want to build in a lab. And he's a guy that can go up and get the football. He's paired with Penix from Washington, and they were just absolutely awesome last year. Watching the two of them play together was poetry in motion. So I don't have a ton of deep information on him, but with some of the people that I trust that I've looked into, he's the name that I keep seeing pop up as like, don't discount him as somebody that could be better than Ibuka, that could be better than Xavier Worthy. Like, don't discount him just because he's from the Pac-12 and it's not USC. Like, he's an absolute player. So he's a guy that I have my eye on, and I'm excited to watch his tape.
Like it. I've seen people talking about him too as maybe even wide receiver 2 in the class. So we'll see. And like you said, dude, like another over 6 foot receiver. Like, dude,
this class is huge.
It's the opposite of last class, man. It's
really
great to see.
It's exciting. So we just finished up round 1.
Yeah, recap it.
So let's recap it real quick. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, Brock Bowers, Mecca Ibuka, Travion Henderson, Raheem Rocket Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, Trey Benson, Braylon Allen, and then Rome Odunes. No, I said it wrong again.
I honestly, you might be saying it right. I think it's Odunze, but right. I don't know, guys.
We'll find out.
I don't
Either way,
mispronouncing.
It's Rome, and it starts with an O, and he's a big receiver from Washington.
Damn it!
All right. So second round, we're not going to spend as much time, on the second round, guys.
We say that every time, and then we do.
Yeah, partly because time's sake, but also partly because we haven't spent a ton of time digging into these guys, and we don't want to say something like, "Oh, this awesome speedster," and then we like go back and we're like, "Oh man, his speed wasn't actually as good as I thought it was." Like, we like saying this based off our tape watching, not just based on what other people watch or people say. Case in point, I was literally asking people about a guy that won't get drafted, the 6'7" guy, Johnny Wilson. Spoiler alert, we didn't draft him, but he is an exciting prospect. I asked people about it. 2 separate people that I respect in the industry. One of talked about how great his hands were, and the other one talked about what a liability his hands were. And I was like, you guys are going to have to fight it out because, like, I don't know what to think. So I don't like saying anything definitively until I've seen it myself. So we're going more off of what we've known from other people that have watched these guys and that we respect, but we haven't necessarily done the deep dives on them ourselves. So that's why we don't want to spend tons of time talking about them. Fair?
Thank you, Garrett.
Yes, there it is.
All
right, take it away, 201.
Second round, 201, and I think I've said this like multiple times now, or he could be the wide receiver 2 in this class.
Tell me
that's just where we're at in the process. I mean, Emeka Egbuka is pretty solidified in there, but I could see him losing ground to maybe one of the other guys, and this guy may be one of them. Malik Neighbors, LSU wide receiver, fantastic ball skills, super fast. I mean, in high school coming out, he ran a 4.4, 38-inch vertical. So assuming going through the college program, it's probably better now. Really came on straight strong last year. Final 4 games, averaged 122 yards receiving. Had a great game versus Georgia, the top tier talent. So, I mean, taking a shot on a guy like this could play in, if this was like a real draft, I'd be happy, really happy with this pick. So, LSU producing another possibly good wide receiver. Malik Neighbors, a ton of talent, high ceiling.
There it is.
There
All
it
right.
is.
With the second pick, I'm going with Michael Penix Jr. Now, I feel like Michael Penix would have fit really well in last year's class because every single quarterback was super old. And Penix falls into that as well, where he's super old. He is actually going to be in his sixth college football season next year. However, he's also a ridiculously good athlete that, by the way, he also threw for 4,641 yards and 31 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. So he absolutely balled out last year. Fantastic season. Showed that he could be the next guy that, maybe things just didn't work out when he started off at Indiana, but really just blossomed during his second stint, his second school, and Washington was really the spot for him. 6'3", so he's got the size as well that you want. So another upside
like
play,
a Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, another Hendon Hooker. Honestly,
and this is probably where you would put Hendon Hooker going into the 2023 season. Like,
right,
could have
second round guy.
Yeah.
Upside.
Yep. All right, so I'm on the clock. 203. I'm taking another quarterback that could see his stock rise, and that's KJ Jefferson, Arkansas quarterback, 6'3", 245. He's a freight train, and he can run the football. So he's able to tuck and run. Obviously can break tackles. You know what? He kind of reminds me of Dak Prescott when he was at Mississippi State.
Okay.
He's got some tools. I think if he puts together a really strong campaign this year, to be honest, I truthfully feel like he could find himself in the first round.
Okay.
Just given his tools. So he needs to work on his processing a little bit, his accuracy a little bit. But other than that, I really like his dual threat ability. I think he has a really good arm. And we'll see. We'll see what happens this year.
I like it. All right, 204. I'm going with Blake Corum, Michigan running back.
I love it.
He was somebody that I thought was going to declare last year. And we actually cut up a ton of tape on him, anticipating that he was going to come out. And then he was like, I'm going to go back to school. And while that was disappointing, I don't blame him at all. Just another year to get right, put more on tape. A little bit undersized. This is one of the few players that we've talked about so far that isn't that elite size, that prototypical size that you're looking for. But, man, he does a lot of things well. He reads the hole really well. He's got good feel for the game, some good burst. Like, he just does a lot of things right. Like, I don't see him, like, while a lot of these guys we talked about, like, if he has an elite season, we could see him. I think even if he has an elite season, I still think he's probably like a mid to late day 2 guy. Like, I still think, like, best case scenario, you're probably looking at him in like end of round 2, beginning of round 3 is like probably best case scenario for Blake, I would guess. We'll see how it all plays out. But he was a guy that was in the running for the Heisman. He just did a lot for the Michigan Wolverines last year. So really, really solid player in Blake Corum.
He had a knee injury against Ohio State. He required season-ending surgery. But like Garrett said, he was a Heisman front runner at that point. When Garrett made this pick, I texted him. I was like, "Damn you!" in all caps, because he was like one of the first guys I did a nerd score on. This going into last year, because I thought he was coming out too, or going into this past rookie draft class, 2023 class. I don't remember what I scored him. I deleted it because I was done with it, or he went back to school.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have kept it so I could reference it. But I just
remember being solid, though.
I remember it being like 74, 75, which is good. So he's 5'7", so he's short, but he's got good build. He's listed at 219. I have here. Who knows how truthful that is, but he carries it.
Even if he's over 200, like at 5'7", like
that BMI, man. But kind of reminds me of Ray Rice, dude.
I could see that.
Yeah, I like Blake Corum a lot. I listen to a lot of Devy shows, follow Twitter a lot in that community, and the community as a whole seems to be pretty like sour or down on him, and I'm not sure why.
He reminds me, and like this isn't going to sound like a compliment, so like I almost didn't even say it, but like he reminds me of Kyron Williams if Kyron Williams was fast. Like Kyron Williams had speed, like we thought we wished he would have. You know, Kyron Williams ended up going in the 5th round. Blake Corum, because of his speed, we could see him going into the 3rd round and in that type of range with much better speed than Kyron had.
I like him a lot, man. I think this is
you're a fan.
Could be hot takey here, but I think he could be like RB1, RB2 of this class when it's all said and done.
You think he could be the top running back
in this class?
Wow. See, I don't see that as a range of outcomes.
If Trevion Henderson does not perform the way you're saying you think he will,
right?
Because if he does, I think he's RB1.
Yeah.
I like Raheem Sanders. I like Trey Benson. I like those guys too, but I'm just saying, like, if he puts another season together where he's like a Heisman campaign type back, where he's gonna have to compete with Donovan Edwards. But I don't know, man. I like this tape a lot. That's all I'm saying. Could be a reach of that take, but I'll say what I think.
We'll see, man. No, I love it. All right, you're back on the clock at 2-5.
Who did I take? Keon Coleman, wide receiver. Great size, transfer from Michigan State over to Florida State. So another transfer into Florida State, 6'4", 215, and he also played basketball at Michigan State too. So he's got tremendous ball skills, able to go up, contort his body, make catches. Fantastic athlete. He needs to refine his route running a little bit, but as far as throwing the ball up, making plays on it, being physical, 6'4", 215, he's got it. So one of those guys that could ascend this year, just depending on how he does. But based off the limited tape I saw, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, no, I don't know a ton about him, so I don't want to speak too much on that. But anytime that you got size and you got opportunity, good things can definitely happen. So I went back to with my next pick. I went back to the Michigan Wolverine running back which feels wrong for me to be drafting 2 players out of Michigan as a big Ohio State guy. But look, I'm trying to draft the best possible players. And Donovan Edwards, look, I have not been the biggest Donovan Edwards guy, but 1, there's a lot of people I trust that really like Donovan Edwards. And 2, when given the opportunity to be the guy, he balled out at the end of last year. Listen to his last 3 games. 216 yards and 2 touchdowns against Ohio State. And then in the Big Ten championship game, he put up 25 carries for 185 yards and a touchdown. And then against TCU, he had 119 yards on the ground. And while he didn't contribute much in the receiving game during that time, he does look like a player that could easily do it. Like, I don't have any concerns as someone that won't be able to contribute in that way. But you look at his numbers and you're like, oh, he didn't even crack 1,000 yards. Yeah, but he was sharing time with the top running back in the country as far as Heisman voting and things like that go. So when he got the opportunity, he looked great. And he's got a little bit more prototypical size. He's 6'1", only 204, which means he's probably like 195. But if he can put a little bit of weight on, and he's a true sophomore, so he'll be a true junior next year, good things could be coming down the pipe for Donovan Edwards too.
He's good. He probably went too late in this draft.
He probably did.
But I like him too. And yeah, when Blake Corum went out and the duties were his, he shined. So another guy with high pedigree was RB4 in his class. And I'm going to take the RB2 from that same class here next with my pick at 207, and that is Will Shipley, running back from Clemson. 5'11", 205 pounds, probably under 200 if he's stepping on the scale at the combine or something. But he's kind of slight. That frame, he's slight, but he's fast, man. He's shifty, can make guys miss. He's got 4.4 speed, can catch the ball, can do it all. He's just a little undersized. So we'll see how he does. Clemson, not the Clemson of the last couple years. We'll see if they can put it together this year, but pay attention to Will Shipley at Clemson.
I will always have an unfair bias against Will Shipley simply because in the very first year of the program, he was in North Carolina, which that was one of my pipeline states. I put everything towards it, and I was the clear favorite to get him. And it was like the first major upset was Will Shipley going to somebody else.
That's funny.
And so
Probably
I will
me.
always have an unfair bias against him simply from that. All right. 208. Talk about a boom bust pick. I thought I made some earlier. This is the ultimate boom bust pick at 2.8. I took Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was being talked about as one of those next great quarterbacks. He was being hyped out of college. He was going to be a Sooner, and things were going to be just great. And just everywhere he's gone so far just really hasn't panned out. A lot of it seems to have to do with who he is as a person. Like, leadership ability, cockiness. Like, there's a lot of people that don't seem to like him, but it seems like all the tools are there for him. So if he can get all of it together, if he can humble himself maybe a little bit, and we can get all of these things working together, he's got the ability. But man, it's a risky pick here. But at the end of the second round, like, I'm shooting for upside, and I think he's the guy that has it.
Yeah, I mean, QB1 in his high school class looked pretty good at Oklahoma until Caleb Williams replaced him.
Yep.
And, I mean, I think that was a good move. But he had some flashes last year at South Carolina. So has arm talent, man. He just needs to improve that decision-making. He still trusts it too much, in my opinion. But, yeah, we'll see. A little undersized, too. He's got really slight frame.
He does.
He's a little guy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he was featured on that QB1 show on Netflix. And I'm not sure if you guys watched that, but he's a cocky dude. I mean, he's QB1 in his class, and he's really freaking good. But, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure he's been humbled a little bit, but I don't know him personally, so
we'll see.
Really know.
All right, you're up.
I'm up. Okay, we're almost there. We are at 209, and I decided to take Jordan Travis, Florida State quarterback. Remember I said pay attention to Florida State. They have a ton of transfers coming in. They've put together a really good team through this transfer portal, and he's a fantastic athlete, really good college baseball player too, and he just seems to be a winner when you watch him play. Like, he just does everything his team needs to do to put them in a position to win, and he's improved so much. So I really think I talked about Nick Whalen earlier. If you pay attention to the Dynasty Nerds brand, we used to do the Film Nerd Show together. Nick and I still talk all the time about these guys, and Nick loves Jordan Travis. I like him too. I've got him on some Campus to Canton leagues. Scores a lot of points on the ground because he's a really good runner. He's very fast, very good athlete, but he can throw the ball too. So kind of reminds me of like Russell Wilson a little bit. Better athlete than Russell.
Okay.
But it's just something about it, the way he plays, his style. So a guy that I think really could ascend if he puts together a really good year, in Florida State is a good year this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 guys from Florida State that we have here at in the top 2 rounds, which is not something that we recently would have thought of out of Florida State.
Yeah, Beamer ball, man. It's Frank Beamer's son down at Florida State playing some Beamer ball. Old Virginia Tech head coach, his son. How many guys have I said really could ascend this year?
Yeah.
I think every single guy.
That is one of
really
that's your go-to.
That's my go-to. I've said that. It's like Rich's. This is a guy.
This is a guy.
I know. I need to expand my vocabulary.
All right. Well, this is a guy at pick 210 that you might not have heard of because he hasn't really played at all. Malik Benson, wide receiver, Alabama, top JUCO transfer in the country this year. And in recent years, Alabama's had so many good receivers, but that well really seemed to dry up. And they've really counted on this transfer portal over the past couple of years to be their bread and butter for their top tier receivers. And it seems like they're doing the same kind of thing this year where Malik Benson, I mean, you're talking about somebody that has the size. He's got 6'1", 195. So while it's not like crazy elite size, it's good size. And man, just can run away from the defense. He was the number one JUCO player in the country. Like, he was the guy. So looks like he's going to insert himself right away into the starting lineup for Alabama. And that's been really good over recent years for a lot of these receivers. So we'll see if that happens again with Malik Benson.
Yeah, interested to see what happens at quarterback for Alabama this year. 2-11 on the clock. And this is a guy that I know. This is a guy that I know a little bit about. I've got him on some Campus to Canton rosters, and he produced really well for me. That's J. Michael Sturdivant. And he played for Cal. Yeah, he played for Cal last year. He's transferring to UCLA this year. And talk about pedigree. His uncle's in the Hall of Fame, Floyd Little, running back. His parents have backgrounds in, dad was in the NFL. Mom has a collegiate track background. So he's got the genes, got the genetics. 6'3", 205, another guy with really good size. And if you have not seen this guy play, YouTube him. He's got great fluidity to his hips, can go up and catch the ball. Fantastic athlete. Pay attention, UCLA, what they do this year. And when you do get a chance to watch them, watch out for J. Michael Sturdivant.
There we go. Last but not least, going back to the Bama well here, Jace McClellan. Jace was one of the top, actually, I believe he was the top running back in his class. If he wasn't the top one, he was one of the top 3 or 4 guys in his recruiting class. And when called upon, he played pretty well last year. The problem for him was he's been behind some pretty good running backs. And specifically last year, you had a guy named Jahmyr Gibbs transfer to Alabama and stole a little bit of his shine, unfortunately. But he's got good size to him, 5'11", 212 pounds. So another guy that would have been more ideal size-wise than some of the guys that we had last year outside of, Bijan and a couple of those players. But really talented player, really great program that's known for putting out top-tier running backs. So I'm counting on this guy in a senior campaign to show us why he was one of the top recruits and why he's going to be the leading running back for Alabama this year.
Bijan Robinson was in that high school class, so Bijan was one, actually.
Bijan was one. Okay, he was towards the top though.
He was 6th. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So he's behind Zach Evans, DeMarcus Bowman.
Ooh, that hurt. He was Clemson, right?
Yeah. Then he transferred to Florida. Didn't pan out. He's somewhere else.
I had him in a couple C2Cs that didn't pan
Tank
out.
Bigsby.
Yep, heard of him.
Marshawn Lloyd, who I still like.
Yep. South Carolina, right?
Yeah, he had an injury. So did Jace McClellan early in his career, but he's done a really good job as the second fiddle. So yeah, I'm also interested in seeing how he does this year.
All right.
Wrap it up, Garrett.
That wraps it up. Yeah. So I didn't think this was going to take us, an hour to get through this mock draft, but hopefully it gives you a good idea of the overall value of the class, the specific positions that we're looking at, where the upside is, where the pitfalls might be. So that way you can better strategize for your future drafts.
Yeah.
With that, I think we're done, man.
Yeah,
got anything else?
Like we said earlier, it's important to stay ahead. Take down notes, who to pay attention to. And yeah, man, I appreciate everybody listening. Talkin Dynasty, Garrett, and myself. And I'm going on vacation for the next 3 weeks. So I'm not sure when our next episode will be, but we'll get one as soon as I get back out there. But if you're tuning in from the Dynasty Nerds podcast feed, make sure you go leave us a review on the Talkin Dynasty podcast feed. Garrett and I will be dropping our show on there as well as on the Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel. So appreciate everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys.
Peace.
See you.